Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel Java Classified. In this video, I will explain how to implement the Spring security by using IntelliJ and Spring Boot. So, for creating the Spring Boot application, we are going to Spring Initializer. Here, we need to define the group ID com.security. Now, defining the artifact as a demo or SB security like that. Here also defining the Spring security project for Spring Boot. Now I have selected the package as a jar and Java version as a 17. Let's add the dependency. Here we need to click add the dependencies. First adding the actuator. Now going to add DevTools. Now going to add Spring Web. Now going to add Spring Security. Actuator, DevTools, Spring Web Security. Let's, if you want to analyze the dependencies, so going to click Explore. Here you will see I am using the Spring Spring Boot version 3.4.1 and Spring Boot Starter Actuator dependencies and Spring Boot Security dependencies and one is Spring Boot Web dependencies, DevTools dependencies. So I'm going to download this project and importing this project into a IntelliJ. First I'm going to C folder. Here creating a project, creating a folder ASB Spring Security. I will copy the downloaded up downloaded application, copying this and going to C folder. Where is SB? Here I'm pasting this project, downloaded project. Now going to IntelliJ, importing this project. Just 1 minute. Here I'm going to click here and open. Going to C drive, C drive, SB Spring Security Project. Clicking OK. Trusted. New window. Yeah. First time it will take time. It will download all the jars from the Maven. So wait until all the jars are not added in the project's class path. Yeah, now all the dependencies downloaded. Let's go to src folder, main folder, and here there is a application, main application. This name as a SB security application. Now let's define the port. So here I'm going to change property as a YAML, renaming it application property. Now changing the extension as a YAML. Going to YAML file here, defining the Spring application name, Spring application name as a SB, copying this one. Now going to define server.port 9080, saving it. Going to run it. So I'm going to main application. If I will not provide the username password of the Spring Security, then Spring Security will generate a default password. And by default username is, yeah, we need to allow access. If we are not providing the username or password, then Spring Boot by default generate a default password. You can see in the console. This is the default generated password. So I'm going to access this application. So going here, just 1 minute. We need to check the port. So there the port number is 9080, which is defined in the property file. Now going to Chrome browser, here typing HTTP, it will redirect to the 8090. It will redirect to the Spring Boot. Spring Boot will take care. Yeah, here we need to pass the username as a admin and password we need to copying from the console because I have not provided the password in here. So copying this, pasting this in the password input, clicking it. It is bad. What is default username? Let's check what is default username. Global admin. I think the default username is a user and password we need to passing the password which is printed in the console. Click in, yeah. Now I'm able to log in. So I'm going to define some API. So here going to create another packages com.controller. Here defining the APIs like home controller, defining REST endpoints here by using REST controller. Now going to define public response entity, response entity as a string get home data here, and just I am in this method we will return a just a string value only, like this is home controller response dot response status dot response entity response status dot why it is not taking. Let's check is here. It will take the status code. Yeah, HTTP status code we need to pass here. HTTP status code. HTTP status code dot HTTP status code dot value of like just 1 minute here going to HTTP status code or status code here. Let's check another one as well. Headers status code dot value. Okay, so I'm going to define HTTP status code, removing the response, and here also removing this one right now. Now going to define HTTP status code interface dot, sorry, I think status code status dot. Okay, here defining the endpoints as a get method home. Now going to rerun again. I am trying to access the home API. So here going to define home. Yeah, it is giving right now. This is a home controller, but let's open to incognito mode and trying to access this API. It will check. It will need to pass username and password. So I'm going to Spring Boot console here, copying the password and passing the username as a user and password, pasting here, login. Now I'm able to access. So I'm going to define another API and implementing the security filter chain for which API need to secure and which API need not to be secure. So here I'm going to define another like login controller. Define REST controller and here public response entity defining as a text right now. In upcoming video I will explain more about it. Just remember how to securing the API and how to not securing the API by using Spring security filter chain. So here get login API. Now here returning the as a string data as well. This is login API. No need to pass auth- auth- need to pass authentication data and defining the HTTP status code. HTTP status dot log. Okay, and here going to define endpoint as a login. Now I am going to define another AP, another REST controller. REST controller like home login and item controller. So here I'm going to define same things, REST controller, public response entity, defining as a text in a return type, get items, return new response entity here, defining this is a items data for accessing the item we need to log in first. So I'm going to define here as a http status dot okay, and here this is also a get API as a item. Now going to define a configurations file like I'm going to create another package first dot config. Here defining the Spring Security config or security config SB. Clicking here and going to add at the rate configurations and enabling the Spring Security, enable is web security, and here defining the filter chain for securing API, filter chain, security filter chain. Now here going to define default Spring Security filter chain, filter chain. Spring Security filter chain. Here passing the HTTP security and HTTP. Now here let's define HTTP dot build HTTP dot authorization request. Here we need to pass the request as now request dot request matchers colon home colon item. Yeah, only two API need to access after the login. So here we have passed the authorization HTTP request, and here we are passing to URL dot authenticated dot request matcher. Here defining same thing, defining the which API no need to login. So defining login dot permitted all. Now going to define HTTP. Yeah, now going to build this dot build, adding a signature exception and returning this by using return method and adding as a bean. Also defining the username and password by using property. So I'm going to application YAML property here defining Spring Security user. So here user defining as a root and password, password also defining as a root. Username and password, yeah, that is fine. Now going to run it again. Let's check. No converter capable, type that string. Why it is not taking user? Okay, so I'm going to define string security username, that is already defined. Why it is not taking string user as a root and defining password as a root. Going to, so here defining, oh my bad, going to here spring security username and password. So here going to define password as a root or password is not accepted key. Okay, then here going to define root username password. Removing this one and defining the password first one. User okay. User dot okay. Here we need to pass the and user user colon password and dot defining the name. I have passed the wrong key and value. Now it is correct. You need to add Spring security user and username and password. So I'm going to run it again. Closing this, it will not generate the default password right now because I have provided the username and password in the application YAML file, and we need to authenticate the authenticate for accessing the home home API and items API, and for login controller no need to authenticate. So I'm going to Chrome browser and here first going to log out. Now what happening? Let's check. Right now it is not 9080. What is the port number? 9080. Okay, I'm going to connect this one and trying to access. It is going to access denied. So in this case we need to disable few features here. So going just 1 minute. I'm going to log in API. Yeah, it, I'm going to access this API because in the Spring Security config file, I have provided the permit to access this URL. So if we want to go access any other API like home, it is also able to access. Why? Uh, let's remove this and going to incognito mode. I think there was some caching issue. So going to login here. Yeah, I'm able to access this and trying to home page. I'm not able to access because Spring Security internally checking which API we have access, which API we don't have access. So when I'm going to access home API, I'm not able to access. And if I'm trying item API as well, that API also we can't access. Now it is giving access denied. Now going to add add here form login enable HTTP basic login enable. So here defining dot basic dot basic HTTP basic here HBC and HBC dot enable disable. Now HTTP basic and going to form login as well. So for the form login I'm going to enable this one FLC and here FLC dot enable. By default it is enabled. Form login FLC by default it is enabled, so no need to disable it, no need to enable it. Here I'm going to comment this line and trying to rerun it again. So in that case maybe it will not give denied, it will just redirect to the Spring Boot login pages. Now going to access same here, it is not going to redirect to login page. Why? Permit all, I have given the permit all. HTTP. Now let's enable this one as well with default and form login. Let's disabling it and here defining the with default form login. Here why it is not taking FLC default login with defaults. Configure disable login page password. So login page. Yeah, I don't want to use our custom login page. It will need to redirect default. Let's check with default. I it is not taking. So I'm going to checking just 1 minute. Uh, uh, .csra disable. Default login success URL. So here I'm going to pass login. Now going to stop this and trying to run it. Let's check what will happen. Let's try to log in. I'm not, yeah, now it is going to login page. So let's check login. My bad. Here, let's define this one as a login user API and stopping this and sorry, we need to add this one in the configurations as well so that we are going to access this API without authentication. Default success login, not in default healer login processing URL. Login processing URL. Here we have passed this on, stopping this and login. Let's check again. Login hyphen user. I'm able to access this one and trying to access item API. Yeah, it is going to here. Here, let's check root and trying to access. Yeah, now able to access items API as well as home API after login. So in this video I have shown you how to implement the Spring security without passing the username and password in the property, and also configuring the APIs, which API need to access without authentication and which API need to not access without security. So thank you for watching this video. If you like my video, you can subscribe my channel. Thank you. In next video, I will explain how to use username password in a memory authentication in a user detail service in memory. Thank you.